Rock and river, wind and weather. Robert Louis Stevenson's Highlands have their American counterparts. Old plain men with rosy faces, young fair maidens with quiet eyes, winds and rivers, life and death. Within a century of the last correspondence between Selina Huntingdon and George Washington, the former colonies had extended over the continent to the Pacific strand. The aged Sam Houston asserted that the American epic was superior to the romances of Europe, that the true saga was in the unwritten legends of heroism and adventure which the old man would tell them who are now smoking their pipes around the roof trees of Kentucky and Tennessee. Yet there was more to it than that. The peopling of the continent by what we loosely and inaccurately call Anglos was more than adventure or heroics. Consider my journey between Connecticut and the Gulf Coast of Texas. The fall line all along the Atlantic seaboard is quite near the sea. In New England, almost on top of the shoreline. Further south, to the southern end of the Appalachians, increasingly distant, yet not too far removed. The head of navigation on the rivers of Texas is much further inland. Yet in 1783, the Appalachians and their Piedmont, even without the Native Americans' presence, were a barrier to the westward expansion. Florida was then Spanish. Between Georgia and Maine, there were few passages through the palisade and rampart of the mountains. Only in the northeast Appalachians, east of the Adirondacks, do the mountains bend their axes, creating routes to the northwards, in the Taconics, the Berkshires and the Green Mountains, the White Mountains and the Mahoosucs. And these routes are, in a sense, dead ends, leading only to the St. Lawrence and politically to Canada, hostile territory in 1783. The Great Valley was accessible and accessed by the Germans we call the Pennsylvania Dutch, and by wave after wave of Ulstermen. But it also was a cul-de-sac, for once in it, westward ho, the way was blocked, Cumberland and Allegheny insisting they shall not pass. That there is a Houston at all, the man or the city, is testament to a great event. The great problem with Bethesda all along was management. Whitefield was no manager, and managing what he had founded almost in passing while he carried on his missionary work wasn't in his remit in any event. But he might have, as the Countess might have, done a much better job in appointing managers for the place. The fact was, Bethesda, even before Whitefield left it to the Countess as his dying bequest, was used as a sort of apprentice training for evangelicals destined for the clergy or missionary work or teaching, and most of those sent out to Georgia by Whitefield and the Countess couldn't have managed to organize an orgy in a whorehouse. Worse still, after the Countess took over, she did send one man to Bethesda who was competent, in the sense of having the wisdom of the serpent, and, being a child of this world, wiser in his generation than the children of light. Mr. William Percy, presenting to the world and the Countess a countenance of plausible innocence and unblemished piety, understood sums and accounting and bookkeeping and money, income and outlay, and cookery, at least when it came to the books and accounts. He stole her blind. Phyllis Wheatley was the first correspondent the General and the Countess had in common, bar perhaps various Fairfaxes. Yet they had had an encounter at one remove even before that. Washington's diary for November 5th, 1774, records that Mr. Percy, a Presbyterian minister, dined here, which goes to show you that to the average Anglican, all these Calvinists are much of a muchness. In fact, Washington seems to have entertained, partly unawares, that less-than-angel William Percy, who was returning from preaching in Philadelphia, to his mismanagement of Bethesda Orphan House and the feathering of his own nest. The best thing that could have happened to the Countess would have been if the Georgians, at the outbreak of the American Revolution, had simply seized Bethesda, which they had previously declined to accept as the next thing to a gift. The best thing that did happen to the oily Mr. Percy was the outbreak of the American Revolution, which allowed him innumerable excuses for his defalcations, and so entangled the accounts as to make it nigh unto impossible to catch him out. It's always a convenience to someone with his hand in the till to be able to claim that the missing assets vanished due to acts of war, force majeure, Indian raids, Spanish bandits from the Floridas, rebel militias, and Hessians, especially Hessians.